Hey, have you ever seen that really old Tumblr post? I think it was written back during the Paleolithic era or something like that. You know, the one about a hypothetical pink-haired anime girl who is born knowing she's a main character, and so she goes out of her way to make sure that she never ends up being dragged into any stupid anime bullshit. But like, every day there's some new setup for a different anime plot coming towards her in her daily life, and so she has to try and avoid it to make sure that it doesn't end up dragging her in. Yeah, someone actually made a series quite like that. The Disastrous Life of Saiki K is nothing short of a modern-day masterpiece, and if anyone, and I mean anyone, disagrees with me on that, I won't argue with them. I don't like confrontation. The manga and anime centers around Saiki Kusuo, a teenage boy who was born with two things, amazing pink hair and godlike psychic powers. And I most definitely do mean godlike. He can do basically anything. Telepathy, telekinesis, bending reality to his whim, turning things to stone, stuff like that. You know those old Superman comics where he ended up developing a new superpower at the end of every issue because the writers just wrote themselves into corners all the time? Well, it's similar to that, but it's ultimately played for laughs because this is, at the end of the day, a comedy manga. Those of you who aren't familiar with the series are probably saying to yourselves right about now, hey, a manga about a psychic schoolboy with godlike psychic powers. That sounds a lot like Mob Psycho 100. Well, two things about that. For one thing, Saiki K actually came out first, and for another, shut up, don't interrupt, it's rude.
So uncivilized.
I guess one of the other major distinctions between the two is that tonally, Mob Psycho 100 has a greater focus on action, while Saiki K is a wacky comedy almost entirely. Much of the story is centered around Saiki's daily life as he attends high school, and he has two things on his mind on each and every day. 1. Have the most boring day imaginable, and 2. Keep people from finding out he has psychic powers. You see, Saiki... Oh my god. Saiki K? Psychic? I think I'm onto something here. You see, Saiki, as a character, doesn't like his godlike psychic abilities. He's someone who longs for normalcy, to be a mundane, average, everyday person. He kind of idolizes that sort of thing.
My life is a dream come true. That is what you're thinking, right?
It's kind of understandable, I guess. I mean, if you could do literally anything from the moment you're born, it would kind of start to feel repetitive by the time you hit your teenage years. I mean, yeah, Saiki is free to change the world however he sees fit. He can use his reality warping to make people think that pink hair is a totally normal phenomenon in his world. And yeah, he can use his power to fly into outer space and blow up something if it's threatening the planet whenever he feels like, but none of these things seem to really excite him or bring him much in the realm of pleasure. And then of course there are the drawbacks to his psychic powers that only serve to make him dislike them more, such as the fact that he can't control when he reads people's minds, and so he's basically always hearing people's thoughts intruding on his own. Imagine the whole world is one long Reddit thread full of arguing dipshits and you can't look away from the thread no matter what. Yeah, that's Saiki's entire world. Dear God. Also, he has X-ray vision that he can't turn off, so whenever he looks at people he sees straight through their skin, and so everyone around him looks like a walking cardiovascular system. I'm not really sure how X-ray vision is a psychic power, but, you know, it is what it is. And so Saiki, who could take over the whole world with trivial ease, instead contents himself to try and live out an ordinary high school life and fetishizes the mundane as best he can. Honestly, I'd be lying through the hole in my ass if I said Saiki wasn't one of my all-time favorite anime protagonists.
No matter how cute the cat is or friendly the dog, to me they just look like this and this. So if I asked you, do you like the bones on the left or the bones on the right? Your answer would be like mine. I don't care.
Generally speaking, I'm a real sucker for overpowered characters in mundane situations, and Saiki definitely fits that bill to a T. Try as he might to avoid it, Saiki always ends up getting pushed headfirst into a maelstrom of wacky high school shenanigans, and so he has to apply his powers creatively if he wants to get out of them unscathed. For example, one of the early episodes of the show revolves around a school volleyball game. Saiki can't afford to excel because then he runs the risk of becoming popular and getting a lot more attention on him than he wants. I mean, if he did something like that, people might start asking questions and thinking to themselves, hey, that was kind of fucked up. Who does this pink-haired kid think he is? The Bronze Jame? But, on the other hand, he can't afford to throw the game and do nothing either because that runs the risk of making him unpopular and drawing negative attention to himself. Unlike me, who had no choice but to be bad at sports in school, that's a large part of the charm of the series, the ways in which Saiki tries to navigate the slice of life bullshit that constantly gets pushed onto him. And while the ways in which he reacts to these situations are part of Saiki's charm, another big aspect of that is the fact that Saiki is one of the snarkiest bastards in all of anime. He's basically Daria in the body of an anime schoolboy. Or occasionally schoolgirl when he feels like changing his gender arbitrarily.
Well, if you looked like that and weren't a punk, you'd have to be some kind of idiot.
That's exactly what he is.
Just constantly cracking wise and being snide about just about everything. You love to see it. Of course, while I quite admire Saiki for his powers and I enjoy his snarking, that's not all there is to the character. Because, at his core, he is a pretty good person. Saiki, at his core, is a massive tsundere. That's a Japanese word that roughly translates to humongous bitch.
If you're going, can I have your lasagna? Get away from me.
For as much as Saiki may roast his various friends and acts as if he wants nothing to do with them, he will always be the first to step up whenever they need help, even if he has to go out of his way to help them or has nothing to gain from doing so, or even if they have no idea he's done anything to help them in the first place. For instance, Saiki ordinarily wants nothing to do with Kaido, who he finds annoying, but when it turns out that Kaido is being scammed, which happens on more than one occasion, he's the first to step up and actually help Kaido out and get his money back, usually with Kaido not having any knowledge of Saiki's involvement. For as much as Saiki may complain about these people, he will always use his many Dragon Ball Z powers to help them at the first sign of trouble. Usually complaining about it all the way, but hey, you know, that's how it is. Personally speaking, I'm a big fan of those episodes where Saiki has to help those two wacky meth cooks from Albuquerque.
Please don't do this. Mike, you don't have to do this.
Yeah, unfortunately I do.
While we're on the subject, I do have to take a moment to talk about how great Saiki's supporting cast is because they're a large part of the series' charm. Because, for as much as Saiki is an anime protagonist in denial, all his various friends are, to some extent, protagonists of their own anime, usually encompassing different genres. For instance, Hyro is absolutely a sports anime protagonist. Kobayasu is definitely a protagonist from an old delinquent anime, and Akechi is absolutely an anime detective with how hyper-intelligent he is. And then of course there's Teruhashi, who is absolutely a parody of those super perfect anime girls, but the thing is, she's perfectly aware of how perfect she is and absolutely weaponizes that fact whenever she has to. I suppose you could say she's similar to the protagonists of those series that are popular among dudes who get no bitches and stack no paper. You know the kind I'm talking about.
Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless.
She also has a thing for Saiki, but you know, Saiki is too much of a base Sigma male to ever return those feelings. While I do rather like Saiki as a protagonist, I have to admit a large part of the charm comes from how he bounces off these exceptionally loud and boisterous personalities, and the various shenanigans they end up drawing him into. These are, after all, the various people Saiki will go full Gigachad to protect. He's a true hero, a true human being. He's the exact kind of Sigma male introvert icon that people like me can aspire to be like. Introvert gang, rise up. You know, if you feel like it, that is.